Welcome back to Prepper Boss. This is part 2 of our SHTF series on how to get out of populated areas. In this case, get out of the big city. You should relocate from death zones. Death zones are big metropolitan cities. We've all seen photos, movies, online newsreels of the streets of San Francisco, or homeless in Orange County, California, along the riverbanks. You name it, Detroit, New York. They are not survivable for those of us that are constitutional followers. So how do you do that? How do you get out of these cities? I'm going to give you a few minutes of our personal reflection on how we got out of the big city. Now, we are from a large metropolitan area in California. Actually, it's a suburb of a big city. And it's really no different in a suburb if you're 30, 40 miles away from downtown. A lot of the riffraff heads eastward, creates trouble, or lives in areas where it's less expensive than the big city, and they cause trouble out there. We experienced that. So number one way to get out of the big city is to plan ahead. You've heard the expression, the 5 P's, prior planning prevents poor performance. The longer you have and the more you plan ahead and the more you stick to your plan, the easier it will be. In our case, we first found our new area in around 2001. And then we went back and visited a couple times a year during all different seasons for the next 13, 14 years before we bought a house. We bought a house in 2015. I retired from my job as an educator in 2017, and we never looked back. What did we do in the meantime? Number one, we got out of debt. Now, I had planned ahead what my retirement income would be once I left California. And then for 2 years prior to that, we lived on that amount in California that we would have as income in our new area. So we laid the groundwork financially a couple years in advance. Now, let me point out that this is going to be different for everyone. Some of you will still need to be working. Some of you have little kids. Some of you need to find a school or figure out how to homeschool. The best way I found to do this is when you're getting out of debt, get rid of everything you don't need. You don't need a big fancy truck if you're going to go someplace else where your income's going to go down. In our case, we built a new house in California in 2003. I put it on a 15-year loan, paid it off in 9 years. That was critical in opening the doors financially for us to have more options when we wanted to get out of California. Before we moved, a couple years before we moved, we purchased 2 vehicles that were more suited for the area we were moving to and not needed really in the bigger city metropolitan area. And then we paid those off. So when we moved, had not one penny of debt. We sold our house a year ahead of time, rented it back, liquidated everything we didn't need, stashed $50,000 in cash because we had no house payment in the 2 years before we left to add to our investments. And we laid that groundwork for advanced options. And as it turned out, it worked out pretty well. Now, I didn't find this out until after we moved, but there's plenty of help and advice out there. Look for Facebook groups, like forums. There's a couple Facebook groups. One is Leaving California. Another one is Life After California. People post what their intentions are on there. They get advice from other people that have already moved, that sort of thing. What I find interesting is if we go back up to planning ahead, there's a lot of people that don't plan ahead. A lot of people who decide they're going to leave and then they try to figure out how to do it. That's a more difficult route to take. Now ours was a different situation. I knew I was going to retire on a certain date. We did not have the need or the desire to work after we left for retirement. So we had that all planned out and it was just a seamless transition. So we lived on that new budget, the new budget that we would have in our new area. We lived on that budget for 2 years in California. And that proved to be invaluable. Once we got to our new area, we never looked back. I left school on a Wednesday, May 24th, 2017 at 12 noon. We were on the road, headed east for a 2.5-day trip to our new house. We got there at 9:30 p.m. on May 26th. We already had partial house set up because we owned the house for 2 years. We went in, took our suitcases, took the dogs in, all went to sleep, woke up the next day, seamless transition. So I would encourage you to follow these steps and make a plan that's good for you. The more you plan, the smoother it will be. The less debt you have, the less junk you have, the less obligations you have will yield less stress in the whole thing. If you've got 3 cars and 2 drivers, get rid of one of the cars. Unless you're a contractor or something and you need the 3rd work truck, something like that. But eliminate the junk you don't need, take the junk you do need, move and never look back. Then you want to assimilate into your new area. Shortly after we got here, we went to a little outdoor type fair in the small town in our county. I saw the sheriff there of the county, went over, introduced myself, and I said, "Hey, what do we do if we need you?" And he says, "Well, I'll just call 911 and the state police will come out or they'll transfer it to us and we'll be there." And he says, "Oh, by the way, feel free to defend yourself until we get there." That's the kind of area that you want to live in. Thanks for sticking through to the end. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Check out those Facebook pages. I'm sure there's one for whatever state you're in. And give it a try. In the meantime, like, subscribe, and comment. And we'll see you in the next segment.